I was minding my own business this morning when a hacker came along and stole my data from the unsecured public network. Gee, I wish there was some way to prevent that from happening.
All you need is ExpressVPN. A VPN, or virtual private network, encrypts your data so the bad guys can't steal it.
Wow!
Have you ever heard of dynamic pricing?
What's that?
Online retailers charge you more based on where you live. With ExpressVPN, you can appear anywhere you want and get the best deal.
That's my favorite kind of deal. What else can ExpressVPN do for me?
You can get access to streaming content that's normally blocked in your region.
Could I even use it to get past restrictions on work or school networks?
Yes, all you have to do is use the ExpressVPN app on your device. You can even use it on your router.
That's right. Just go to expressvpn.com/A C for a special offer and get 3 months free when you sign up for 1 year of service.
What a deal.
Thanks, ExpressVPN. That's expressvpn.com/ACP.
It's time for the Alien Conspiracy Podcast. We are your hosts, Agent ETA,
Agent Ether,
Agent Redacted,
Agent Kruger, and Agent Anderson. Come along as we examine UFO sightings, conspiracies, and all things strange. You can follow the show on Twitter at AlienConPod. We also have an email address, alienconpod@protonmail.com. We would love to hear from you. And don't forget to check us out on other social media platforms like Discord. Links in the description. This week's episode, Action Park. Yeah, Action Park, this is one of those urban myths that I've heard about, whispered in the back rooms of the internet, and I never really believed the stories until I read about it for myself. And it turns out that
damn near all true.
It's not only is it as bad as everybody was saying, but it's actually worse. far worse than what I had read previously. So this was Agent Redacted's idea. He wanted to do this topic, so thank you, Agent Redacted. It was quite a lot of fun to read about all this nonsense.
Yeah, this Action Park is just like pure insanity. How high were they?
We'll get to that.
I gotta say, having grown up outside the States, I've never heard of Action Park before.
Well, you're about
I was
to.
loosely familiar with it, but speaking of how high were they, just the fact that they had their microbrewer, their beer garden, whatever, right next to Motor World.
Yeah.
Right next to where all the motor vehicles were. All right, so they didn't really think about that, did they? But I mean, that's part of the biggest theme of this whole thing is safety was not key. It was not.
Yeah.
It was not really considered all that much in this park with a lot of the rides.
Well, the philosophy of the founder was what was his name? Gene Mulvihill, or I think Mulvihill?
Yeah. That last name's a little difficult. Yeah. Mulvihill.
Yeah.
They called him Uncle Gene.
His philosophy was that he wanted to put the action in the hands of the park attendees or the rider, and you assumed your own risk. And if you got yourself injured, that was on you. But getting a little ahead of ourselves there, but sometimes that seems like maybe that was just a convenient excuse for him to cut corners and not have to worry about safety and stuff. But we'll talk about all that stuff.
So I'm not familiar with Action Park, so I want to know a little bit more about it.
Okay. Well, let's get started.
It started off as a ski resort.
Yep.
Yeah.
And from what I understand, the first rides that they put in were actually the alpine slides, which ended up being some of the more notorious rides.
Are those inner tube?
But they did it to draw. It's like a half pipe, like a concrete half pipe. I think it was made out of concrete, fiberglass and asbestos, from what I understand.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll get to some specific rides. We'll talk about a little bit more about the alpine slides. Let's get a little bit of history about the resort before we get into the specific rides and all that stuff. So we're talking about Action Park, which is in Vernon Township, New Jersey. It started off in 1976 as the Great American Recreation Ski Area. They wanted to make some more money during the off season, and they followed what a lot of other ski resorts had been doing, and they built the infamous alpine slide, which was a 2,700 foot. That's like half a mile, 2,700 foot long slide, right?
It's a big one.
Yeah, and it's got like half pipe is that makes me picture like something big. It was just like a little.
Not.
Yeah, by half pipe, what ETA means is like it's a little bit bigger than it's the shape. Yeah, it's a little bit bigger than the sled. So it's not something huge. So you don't have a whole lot of margin for error. But so basically you're on a sled, you had a handbrake, and you would go down. That's a pretty simple concept. But some of their advertisements would say like, it's so easy. Kids could do it. I saw a mother going down with her baby. Like anybody can do this thing. It's safe. It's fine. You know?
Now, if a mother did go down with her baby, that was extremely irresponsible.
Yeah.
Like if it's the same ride that I rode, like what I was describing, you should not do that. Damn it. Don't do it.
Yeah. In 1978, they added 2 water slides and a go-kart track. At this point, it was called the Vernon Valley Summer Park, and it officially opened as Action Park on July 4th with 2 opening day promotions. This is probably one of my favorite parts of the whole story is the opening day. Their 2 promotions were a Dolly Parton lookalike contest, because who else, and a tobacco juice spitting contest.
The golden years.
Oh, if that's not some foreshadowing, I don't know what is. You know, you're in for a real strange ride here in this episode. All right, in 1979, they began adding water slides and pools among other attractions, and at the time, this was one of North America's earliest water parks. And when I was a kid, actually, we went to Raging Waters in San Dimas.
Raging Waters, dude, yeah.
And a lot of the stuff at Raging Waters looked very, very similar to what they had at Action Park.
You remember Dropout?
Hell yeah, I remember Dropout. That was a good one.
That was the one, dude. Yeah.
That was like their scariest one back in the day. It was Dropout. It was basically just a straight down, almost vertical drop, straight down. I don't know how tall it was, but when you were a kid, get on that thing, it felt like about 1,000,000 feet.
You know, occasionally you do get injuries and deaths at Raging Waters.
It's pretty rare, though.
It is rare, but it does happen.
It's pretty rare. But so the guy, Gene Molleville, he didn't want to do the same stuff that everybody else where, you know, you get strapped into something and it twirls around. So his son, Andy Mulvihill, man, that name just throws me off. He recalls his father's philosophy. He says he wanted to take the idea of skiing, which is exhilarating because you control the action, and transfer it to an amusement park. There's inherent risk in that, but that's what makes it fun. Like I said, it sounds a little convenient, but anyways,
I mean, I understand it. Sounds. I mean, I get it.
The park grew to 250 acres with 75 rides and was a full-blown amusement park that had started off as a simple off-season alpine slide. So they grew this thing, and there's a whole backstory as to how he got his financing and some Wall Street shenanigans and all that stuff. But I don't really want to get into that stuff. It gets a little bogged down, I think. But yeah, so if this was obviously a simple amusement park, we wouldn't be talking about it on this show. You know, no Disneylands for us. I guess, you know, if you hadn't picked up on it yet, it was a very dangerous place. And that was supposed to add to the fun. But some of these rides are I can't even, words cannot describe. But so the park was open until 1996. At that point, it was bought by a different company, and the water section was operated like 98 to 2010 under a different name, I think. And then it opened briefly from 2014 to 2016 as Action Park. And they were hoping to cash in on like the nostalgia or whatever. And just looking at these dates, even the original run, it was open from essentially 76 to 96, which is just insane. If you just keep those years in mind as we describe what we're about to describe. And my reaction was, how in the hell did they not get shut down after one day, let alone 20 years?
Well, I mean, after one death.
Yeah. But we'll get to the deaths. Yeah,
we'll get to all that. But yeah, there's a ton of stuff that happened there, and like as far as like the type of like the amount of injuries and stuff, it wasn't just the deaths. There's a lot of injuries and stuff. And I even heard like, accounts from that said like the local ER would, on an average day, they would receive at least like 5 to 7 guests from that park that would have to come to the ER to get treatment for something,
every
whether it be,
day,
whatever.
Every day.
I've actually heard larger numbers than that, but like, I don't know if some of the larger numbers are to be believed. I would have to think that they're probably including like everything from a gash to, a broken bone and there were actually a lot of broken bones on a lot of the rides.
Yeah.
Throughout the years there. And
we'll get to the specific rides in a moment, but over the years, the park developed several nicknames such as Traction Park, Class Action Park, and stuff like that.
Class Action. Yeah.
That's how there's actually a documentary named Class Action Park, I believe. On HBO. It was like an HBO documentary or something like that, or that's where it was released. Yeah. So in addition to just, the general unsafeness of it, there's a little bit of background that we have to talk about as well. So first of all, many of the employees, or almost nearly all of the employees, were teenagers as young as 14. And if they worked there for a season or two, like 2 years or whatever, they could get a promotion to some sort of management position, like, the head of park security. So the entire place was basically run by kids, by almost children. They're barely not children anymore, And hey, no offense to you young people out there, but
like Agent Redacted.
But I mean, having like, 17-year-olds in charge of the park security is just seems a little strange to me.
Well, even like people in their early 20s, they still have a ton to learn. Know when I was 20 years old, I was still quite the idiot. You know what I mean? Like, but like, it's like, this whole place was it was like, I keep on like getting reminded of like Wayne's World, like action park, party time, excellent. That seems like that was like the attitude of like almost everybody that worked there. You know what I mean? It was party time, whether you work there or whether you're visiting,
Right.
Well, it was it was like if they made a Lord of the Flies amusement park, except it was too realistic.
Yeah. That's a pretty good analogy, actually.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. They would have like training sessions for like, if somebody's drowning, practice rescuing them and stuff like that. But those were typically used to haze new hires or new employees rather than actual training. Right. During the rides, the employees, they didn't really enforce any of the rules like height and weight restrictions. If somebody showed up to go on the ride, they're like, all right, you want to go ahead, have fun, regardless of whether or not they should be going on that ride or not. One of the largest factors that is not really highlighted often enough is that pretty much everybody at the park was drunk all the time. They did not enforce age limits. They served alcohol to minors. The employees would steal alcohol.
It seemed like that was like a huge part of the culture there.
Yeah.
Especially the culture that was also like a part of like being an employee there as well.
Right.
They all seemed to be drunk always, like it seemed like their microbrewer that they had on site there right next to Motor World. Cause there's 3 different parts of the place is Alpine Center, Motor World, and Water World. Right.
Yeah.
But like right next to Motor World, that's where all the beer was, so, I mean, it seems like they were pretty relaxed. Like what you just said, they would even sell to people who were obviously underaged, it was like a free for all.
I also read that they had kiosks around the park that would sell alcohol in addition to the brewery. So you didn't have to go way over to Motor World to get alcohol. You could get it pretty much anywhere. So everybody was drunk all the time there, apparently. That's what, when ETA earlier was saying party time excellent, that's sort of what he was referring to. He didn't mean like the spirit of freedom or whatever. He meant literally they were partying,
Yeah, it was a big party.
And they weren't serving like the little tiny 16-ounce cups or like the 20-ounce cups you can get, like full-on Stein-sized German beers. They would have their version of Oktoberfest. It was just...
Yeah. Gene would apparently dress up in lederhosen and do polkas and stuff. That guy was insane.
Kind of want to go to this place.
I love
now.
the fact.
I know it does.
It's the attraction to danger. That's it. I mean, everybody's gonna be attracted to death and danger, right? Like it's crazy. And then the fact that he would pay his employees to go down and test these rides out while they're being constructed. Are you talking
about the cannonball loop? We'll get into that.
We'll get to that.
No, that's not just that. No, but there's the man and the ball in the ball. Have you heard of that one?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yep. We'll get to that.
You know what? The more and more I did research on this, the more and more I felt like I missed out. Like,
I know, right?
I understand. I understand that this place was pretty dangerous. It could be, but like I also like really want to go there, and like if I could have gone there as a youth or something, like I grew up on the West Coast, not the East Coast, so there's no chance of that ever happening. And I'm also a little young for this,
Well, there was versions of it. I mean, you could find, like you mentioned, raging waters, and like my neck of the woods, there's wild rivers, but also the Big Bear. You would go down that alpine. I didn't even know that existed, so I feel like I missed out on that. Then not only that, but like they had rides that like the wave rides. Those weren't, like those were great in the beginning, right? But then you started tallying up the death count.
I enjoyed the heck out of Raging Waters when I was younger, up until the point I realized how much piss there must be in all that water. And then I was just like, I don't know if I want to go anymore. I don't know, man. Like, I don't know. It's just like whatever, whether it be
the water
pool,
circulates, all right? It just keeps on circulating. Don't think about it. Mind over matter.
Yeah, to accept it, you just can't think about it because everybody's pissing.
The amount of chlorine they would put at Wild Rivers, you'd come out like everybody looked like they were stoned. You're just like blurry eyed after like the first 30 minutes of any ride.
Well, you have to put that much because everybody's pissing in the water. It is what it is, man.
Game theory, yo. Everybody else is doing it, so you might as well do it as well. That's a simplified version.
Yeah, I mean that's
of game
my
theory,
excuse. Yeah, I'll take that.
But that's just a game theory.
But yeah, Action Park though, like they actually had a couple rides that were fed by like natural springs and stuff. Like and actually,
it's so natural that they were as cold as hell. Hypothermia cold.
Let's talk. I want to talk a little bit more about like the general information, and then we'll talk about those specific rides. So, in addition to everything we mentioned so far, so a lot of the guests attending the park were actually from like urban areas, and they didn't know how to swim. And if a guest had to be rescued, employees would write CFS on their wristband. CFS stood for can't fucking swim. And they would do this is actually not to be mean really, but to sort of like let other employees know that, hey, this person can't swim, so keep an eye on them basically. And it would help them identify people who would probably need to be saved from drowning at some point later on in the day. So, but even though these people couldn't swim, this is like where you keep going back and forth on this because it's not like all one-sided. It's not like the park was evil and the guests had no blame because people who couldn't swim would just jump right into the deep end of the wave pool, for example. Like they can't swim. What are they doing? But they would do it. They would just jump right in there.
Yeah.
And then
that wave pool, I think, was 8 feet deep at the deepest, I think.
Yeah. And then they would need to be rescued, of course, immediately because then they would start drowning. So guests would do stupid stuff as well as the park, but we'll let our listeners decide who is stupider, the guests or the park. They also advertised heavily to Hispanic populations, but at the park, very few of the employees spoke Spanish, and none of the signs or instructions or guidelines were actually in Spanish. So you have some people who were probably not that great at English, given instructions to, put their hands here or cross their legs or whatever, which was required on some rides to not, dislocate your shoulders, which, I'm sure we'll get to.
Well, but a lot of those, the way that a lot of those rides were designed, like they were, it'd be beneficial to get a heads up on some things.
Yeah. But so
it's a shame that wasn't translated.
The injuries that happened on a daily basis were sort of considered as the guests' fault, even by the state government, who would say that, these guests weren't following the rules, so they wouldn't have gotten hurt if they were following the rules that they, should have been followed, which isn't the case in a lot of the cases, but a lot of them were caused by guests not following the rules. And to sort of quiet down the guests that got injured, they would just give them free passes for future admittance to the park. And I was like, when I read that, I was like, something. I go and I dislocate my shoulder, and they're like, okay, here, just take a free pass to come back next time. I'm like, think I'm going to come back next time? Maybe actually. Maybe I will.
It's like, yeah, it's kind of confusing because like, well, I did just like dislocate my shoulder, but do I want to come back? Yeah, I do. And that like kind of speaks to like the nostalgia of the place, man. It's like, don't, it's almost like the reason why it was so popular is because it was like everybody knew it was a dangerous place to go. You know what I mean? You know, like you might get injured going there. And that's part of like the allure of it. Like that's part of like the risk, you know, like it's not your regular, like, you know, amusement park, you know?
Well, this brings up one of my,
that was part of its reputation.
This brings one of my bullet points I actually put down in my notes. Average customer was fucking insane.
Yeah, just about. So the way they designed rides was that they would just sort of design them without any rhyme or reason. Like, for example, the infamous cannonball loop that we'll talk about in a moment, I'm sure, was Gene designed that himself on a napkin. Like, they didn't design they didn't hire engineers or physicists or somebody to design the rides in a way that made sense. They just made, okay, we want it to go downhill and do this. Boom, let's do it. And then they would design it, and then people would get hurt. It was
Gina Mulvihill, God bless it, that damn last name, dude. Anyways, Uncle Gene there, you know, as some of the employees called him, he basically, like a lot of the rides that they had set up originally, they just hired local, you know, like carpenters or local welders and stuff. And like, these aren't people that are like, you know, like they're not trained like, you know, as architects or, you know, anything like that. They're not really using physics in a lot of these cases. They're really actually kind of like making the rides around the landscape. You know what I mean? Like they're fitting it to the landscape, you know, and like avoiding some work by doing that as well. But, you know, it's some of those like that cannonball loop one, that one is perfect. It's a perfect example of somebody designing a ride that did not take physics into account in any way, shape, or form.
That was Gene,
you know?
And he drew that. He scribbled that onto a bar napkin.
On a napkin.
Like, then he hired the. You gotta trust it. What a genius.
So before we get into the specifics,
it's crazy.
Before we get into the specific rides, we'll do that in just a moment. I want to give just one more example of how Uncle Gene would operate. So there's, in one of these documentaries or shows or interviews that I watched, I looked at a ton of material. I don't remember where I saw this, but so an employee was telling a story how Gene had him come into his office. He was real friendly with all the employees, you know, a real super nice guy, I guess, to the employees. So the employee comes into Gene's office and he has a cattle prod and he puts it up to his chest and he says like, I just can't do it anymore, man. I'm done. I can't do it. And he goes, pop, and zaps himself and falls on the ground twitching or something. And then the employee is like horrified.
What?
And then Gene gets up laughing. He goes, he's just laughing hysterically. He says, look, it's fake. It's a fake cattle prod, but it makes like a sound and it looks like it's real. So then Gene comes up with a scheme to scare riders who are trying to get on rides without buying tickets, because I guess that was a big problem in the park. So he gets an employee to pretend to be a rider without a ticket, and pretends to shock him with this fake cattle prod. Like, they put on this whole show saying like, hey, where's your ticket? I don't have the ticket. Bam. And he gets him with the cattle prod. And then the onlookers are watching this and they're like scared shitless. And some of them called their parents and reported like an attempted murder or something. Like, it's absolutely insane.
Awesome.
This guy was
awesome,
dude. It was just completely bananas. And that's how this guy ran this park, dude. Just completely off the hook. All right, so that's like
and here's another little tidbit by like how far that guy Gene would go is like at some point like he couldn't get insured by any companies anymore, you know, so he just went and created his own company. Like I think it was like in the Cayman Islands or something like that where it was based. He just made his own insurance company and insured himself.
I think it was named like England and World Co. or something London, absolutely ridiculous.
London
like
and World Insurance or something. Yeah. We'll talk a little bit more about that at the end. But all right, let's get into some of the fun here.
Oh, God.
I think Agent Ether, did you want to go first? with some. I thought you said you
They're
had
so much fun.
No,
okay.
I had
So much fun.
I had a story that relates to this that I'll save for the end.
Say for the end. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Agent Redacted. You want to get into Motor World first?
Okay, I'm covering Motor World, which is one section, one of the themed worlds of the park, and there were 3 sections in this. There was a land section, a water section, and an air section. So in the land section, you had super go-karts, which these were just regular go-karts. Their normal top speed was 15 to 20 miles per hour. This speed was controlled by governor devices, but the employees, they knew how to lodge a tennis ball in the correct space and bring it up from 15 to 20 miles per hour from over 50 miles per hour. That's not even a joke. It's scary to go that fast in something that's specially maintained.
Or it's fun as fuck.
I'd wear a helmet personally. That's just me though. So people would play bumper carts at this speed. And this would result in deadly injuries. Poorly maintained engines also meant riders would sometimes pass out from gas fumes, and that's also not good. Next, we had Lola cars. These were little open-wheel race cars, which they're just basically mini F1 cars. They cost extra money to ride. The speed could also be brought up to over 50 miles per hour with the same method. Now, a microbrewery was also set up nearby, and employees would break in, steal the beer, and then take the cars out and ride them on Route 94, which was a nearby highway.
Well, wouldn't you?
This is peak Darwinism.
That seems reasonable to me. That sounds like just a good time.
Also,
it kind of does.
Yeah, it does. Also, Gene Mullahill said if someone completes the track under 50 seconds, they should have bikini girls jump out and splash them with champagne. And he was dead serious about this, like he wanted to. People would also try to hit employees around the track, like drive into them. So that just proves how insane this is.
Which area was it that they had those these tanks that shot like a?
Oh, that's also Motor World. I'll get to that.
They have something like that by us. They have
those
little
tanks. Oh, that was awesome.
There was also the battle tanks, which they're just like go-karts with little tanks on them and like little metal, cages over them. And they had the ability to shoot tennis balls. And when they shot tennis balls at the other person's target, which were located on the side of the vehicle will stop and spin around for 10 seconds. Now, this was absolute hell to work for employees, since the people, because this is where is this located?
New Jersey.
Oh, because this is New Jersey, they would shoot employees, making this hell to work at. Now, there's also, on the side, there's also tennis ball shooters that you could shoot at the people for, a small price. Now, some sociopath got some tennis balls, found gasoline, poured it on the tennis balls, lit them on fire, then shot them on the tanks, resulting in the tanks catching on fire.
Oh, good times.
That's action. That's action if I've never heard it.
I know there are at least a couple undocumented rides, because in the ads, miniature dune buggies were featured, and I was able to find a couple pictures of them online, but I wasn't able to find any information. We also had, in the water section, we had Miami speedboats, which were just little speedboats. And they're speedboats, but people, yet again, treated them like bumper boats and would crash into each other in, I remind you, snake-infested waters.
Yeah.
There are snakes in the water? What kind of snakes?
It was like a swamp.
I don't know. But you
like
don't want to land in that.
Well, there was an island in the middle that was just infested with snakes and stuff. And the whole area was known for having like snakes.
It was also known.
I don't want to go anymore.
It was also known for gas and oil leakage from the vehicles, which led to many dead fish and dead snakes. And some of the stuff that just happened here was insane. There was one time that someone rammed, they're coming onto the turn where you're supposed to stop and get out of the ride. Someone was parked, but this guy, I bet he's from Florida, he just kept speeding up and got on top of the other person's boat with the propeller keep on spinning, 6 inches from their head.
Yeah,
Those things still exist.
the
I'm
employee-
just gonna throw that out there. They still have those.
I saw an interview with the employee for that incident, and she actually started hitting the boat and the dude with a stick to get him to let off of the throttle. I guess the boat was on top of the other boat, and he was still holding the throttle down. And then he got off the boat and just walked away like it was nothing. So that was probably a drunk person.
Why would you do that?
I came here for action, all right, and I'm gonna get it.
In the there's also another water ride called the Kayak Experience. This is the one famous for somebody flipping out because it's a kayak, and then they touch a fan at the bottom, shocking their shit and killing them. Now, these fans were meant to create like a little rapid experience, like you're going down a raging river.
So it's like a wire or something?
Yeah, it was just exposed circuitry.
So I'm picturing he's like in his boat, he capsizes, he's trying to get back in, and he touches this wire, and then he dies.
Yeah, heart attack.
A heart attack?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
This place is insane.
Cardiac arrest, yeah.
Yeah, well, that was the official explanation. But and there was also a lawsuit relating to this death as well. And I don't think that they ended up winning this one, but like that's one of the. Yeah, what? That's crazy. No, you don't say, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was one of those ones that gave Action Park, the nickname Class Action Park,
Yeah.
that was a big one because because of the way that the guy died was not, it was no good. It was bad.
The state inspectors
I don't
said
want to describe
that
it.
everything was installed properly and everything was fine. The park said that, probably Gene said that it was just a nick in the wire. Other people said it was like 8 inches of exposed wire that was near or touching like a metal grate.
Yeah, I think that's more realistic.
But anyway, either way you look at it, there's water parks and theme parks and whatever all over the world use a very similar mechanism to give the water some kind of current to help guide the riders along the ride. And if you wire it correctly, you do it right, there should not even be a chance of somebody getting electrocuted. There's ways of doing the electrical wiring to where that shouldn't even be a possibility.
Shouldn't there be fail safes or something?
Exactly.
Yes,
the
that too.
fail-safes are involved. We'll shut off the power immediately once that like whatever kind of circuit you have set up, whether it be like a parallel or Sears parallel circuit, whatever it is. Once it encounters one of those once it encounters water or moisture, it'll shut off immediately.
I'm hearing a lot of safety rules. That doesn't rhyme with Action Park. Okay?
No, it doesn't.
I need danger. I need concussions. I need broken ribs.
That is a good point.
Yeah, why are we talking about safety? Like that has nothing to do with Action Park.
Safety's
That
for
was the
losers.
allure.
Well, even their electrical installations apparently had the element of danger just to make it more exciting, I suppose.
Yeah, dude. Yeah,
All right.
more fun.
It was
More
a rite
risk.
of passage.
There was also a bumper boats rides, which you're in a little circular boat, and there's like a front handlebar where the motor and propeller was connected. And since they were small boats, employees would let on larger people or taller people, meaning their feet would stick out. And this is not a good thing when you're playing bumper boats. And this would cause injuries.
Nope.
Also, since the boats were poorly maintained because nothing is maintained,
Because
gasoline
Action Park-
and oil would leak onto riders' skin, injuring them.
These bumper boats are actually still around, and you can find them pretty commonly. Like, they toned them down, obviously, and checked their leakage. But I had a place by my old neck of the woods that was Palace Park, and they had those donut ring. You could like shoot people with water and stuff like that, and just bump into each other. It seemed like harmless fun, but thank God I was short and I didn't have my limbs hanging off the side. But
These rides just look like something you'd see in a top 10 clickbait video.
Yeah.
Just I have no words for how stupid this whole thing is.
It boggles the mind.
stupid fun. All right.
I'd love to ride the Lola cars. Those look really fun.
Oh yeah, I mean they're definitely both the employees and the guests. You can look at interviews from various forms of media, and a lot of them look back on it fondly because it was just one big long party, with no rules. There were no rules.
I'm looking at these images that Kruger posted in Discord of the different kinds of rides and the tank and the half pipe. Some good stuff in there.
Oh God.
It looks like fun, right?
Is the Alpine Slides part of Motor World?
No.
Oh, damn.
If you're done with Motor World, we can get to the Alpine Slides.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Let's get...
Well, all right, let me just, if you don't mind, can I just mention my favorite attraction?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think it is, it might, damn it, it might actually be in the Alpine area. But I'm sorry for this interaction. But this interruption, sorry. So my favorite ride, it's not that the ride itself is like the most dangerous ride or the most sensational ride, whatever the way it's constructed. It's purely the name. Like, this is my favorite name as far as all the rides I've ever seen at this place, right? It's called the Snapple Snap Up Whippersnapper Ride.
Oh, I remember.
Yeah.
Does that exist? Oh, there's also one
Snapple
called...
Snap Up Whippersnapper Ride.
There's also one, I was
It's
looking
like a
at the
bungee
map,
jump.
Kruger posted, the Whippersnapper Bungee Plunge. That might be the same one.
That's probably the same one.
I saw that in an interview too, and they said that it had nothing to do with the drink Snapple. It was just sort of a coincidence, or
No.
Yeah.
Maybe a little hidden sponsor.
Oh, I don't think Snapple would have sponsored this place.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Hey, you never know.
Oh yeah, one quick thing I forgot to mention is one last ride. It's not really a ride. It's just a little chair thing. You sit, it's like a sideways chair on a rail, and it's called the Transmobile, and it moves you from the Motor World to Alpine Center, and there's no seatbelts or anything. You could jump off if you wanted to.
And I'm sure plenty of people did.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to the Alpine Slides, the ride that started the whole thing. This one is... it's just insane. I know we keep saying that, but this one, so the ride was, we described it earlier, but to get to the top, you would take basically what looked like a ski lift.
Oh, no.
And while the side of the ski lift, you'd put the sleds would attach to the side of the ski lift, but they weren't bolted on or anything. You could just bump them and cause them to fall off. And people did. In fact, people would intentionally try to drop them on riders below.
Worse than a snowball, like remember when we saw kids at the ski place dropping snowballs? Imagine that, but with like an actual object, or that you could kill someone.
That would cause some damage. I mean,
Did that not happen?
These were not light sleds. These sleds looked fairly heavy. How heavy, I don't know, but
even if it was still a pound, still
they looked like maybe a 20-pound plus sled, maybe 30 or 40 pounds. And looked like the ski lift looked like it was at least a good 15 feet above the track. I mean, it's kind of hard to tell from the videos, but it was up there a little bit.
Yeah, I'd say 20 feet probably.
Yeah, so I mean,
if it was 10 feet.
Somebody gets hit by one of these sleds, it's going to ruin their day. And I guess this it wasn't super common. This was not super common. Apparently, it would only happen like once or twice a day. Somebody
only once or twice a day.
Somebody would try to do this.
How low risk?
Yeah. So
I'll take those odds.
It wasn't constantly, but yeah. So when they got to the top, guests would be greeted with pictures of bloody photos from previous victims of the ride. Yeah. And I was thinking, like,
no remorse.
Is that intended as a warning? Then why wouldn't you put that at the bottom of the ride before they got onto the ski lift? Because once they're at the top, I don't know if there's any way down other than just taking the ride,
Oh God.
So. Oh, that was just a strange detail. Like, but imagine you're going on a ride at Disneyland and you're ready to get on the coaster, and they're like, "By the way, look at these pictures. This is what might happen to you. Have fun." It's just crazy, man. This place.
Yeah, well, the Alpine Slide, the surrounding there wasn't really hay bales or like grass for what you'd expect in a ride where you could fly off and crash, like what most sane people would think. It was just like rocky terrain. Like you go to some random park and it's just rocks. They didn't even bother to remove them when they're supposed to be removed, and that's what caused the first death.
There was in that documentary, the Class Action Park, I didn't get to complete it, but like the few stories that you hear from these people, like the park attendees, just absolute crack up. Like the guy chose that alpine slide. He's like, it looked kind of safe, you're just simple. And then at one point you're just in the air and you're like, holy shit, I'm 10 feet up in the air. I might die. Like it's so damn hilarious.
Well, yeah, and the way they were describing it is like if you use the handbrake, if you used it too much at the wrong time,
you die.
It would send you flying off the track. If you didn't use it and you're going too fast, it would send you flying off the track.
You die.
So in other words, people went flying off the track on this thing all the time, all day long.
It was also mentioned that you had to keep like the correct center of gravity. So if you like weighed the wrong thing and you weren't the correct height and you didn't, move your momentum. So if you were the correct height, correct weight, your brakes worked, you knew how to distribute your weight, and you knew the turns of the ride, you could get down unscathed.
Yeah.
They have these rides in Germany or like in Europe still available. Less extreme by all means, but still it's there. I mean, if you're not careful, you can fly right off. But
yeah.
I don't think there's rocks around it though.
So people would
not rocks. No, I'm saying they're a lot safer now.
People would get like broken bones, concussions, dislocations. And I even saw some reports of people having like their fingers ripped off.
Oh, joy.
God, that would
fingers
be
ripped
very
off on the
painful.
ride. And injuries were so common that the staff, like the first aid staff or the EMTs that worked for the park, or I'm not sure what their exact title was, but they would actually just hang out on the alpine slope like halfway up, so that when somebody got seriously injured, they wouldn't have to like run up from the bottom, because I guess they called it like cardiac hill or something. So that means like they were just there all the time because they knew that people would be just getting injured all day long. So they just kind of hung out on the hill waiting for somebody to get injured.
I swear I've seen a Simpsons episode with
this.
I
was going to say Gene Mulvihill. Gene Mulvihill sounds like a Simpsons episode name.
I mean, the whole park is like schemed up in Simpsons' mind, right? I mean, it's just like, I swear I've seen an episode where it's like Bart tried his hardest to try to get to this park. And like he's heard legends like, oh, somebody got, somebody died or whatever. And it's just like, that's the allure to go there, is just he wants to be one of the people that survived that park.
This sounds like a park like Homer would make.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the injuries, now I saw this number in a couple different places, like a couple interviews, and I found like a blog that was written by former employees. So this number sounds absolutely incredible, but it seems like many different sources are claiming this number. So they say that there were between 50 and 100 injuries every day. I don't mean bumps and bruises. I mean injuries that needed to be treated, people going to the hospital in an ambulance, people who had to go get like wounds patched up in the first aid tent or whatever. A day, 50 to 100 every day. That is crazy.
How many people did they get visiting the park per day? So it's got to be pretty high, like 10%.
Millions. I mean, not millions, but I mean, it was per year, I meant.
It was a lot, yeah. There's a lot of people going there.
That's a lot, yeah.
And a lot of them came back, which beat my point 4.
Yeah.
I actually found an Action Park meme.
Oh, really?
I
Okay.
posted it. It says Action Park, where you're allowed to hurt yourself, which is appropriate.
The friction burns from the alpine ride were known as the Action Park tattoo. Because I guess
oh no.
The slides, from what they described in the pictures I seen, they didn't look like they were rough concrete, but more like a smooth fiberglass-like material. But if you fell off and you hit that thing wearing only your swim trunks, you would get basically like a really bad like rug burn, but like your skin would peel off in layers.
So like road burn?
You'd get like kind of like a road burn. You get like this blistering, peeling skin is kind of how they described it. And it would probably leave scars. I mean, I guarantee you there's people out there right now with Action Park tattoos that are still walking around to this day.
This is a battle scar. I know I'm a teenager and I'm supposed to have some sort of lack of danger, but Jesus Christ.
Pretty much.
That's it right there. It's the same reason you go riding a bike without a helmet nowadays, I guess. It's just, you're taking it in your own hands, man.
So when people got injured with these burns and scrapes and cuts and things, if it wasn't serious enough to send them to the hospital, in other words, if they didn't have broken bones, I mean, there'd be people who'd be covered head to toe in, these cuts and burns and stuff, and they would They did a lot of shenanigans to hide the number of injuries so they wouldn't have to report them to like any sort of official.
Yeah, I remember they said like if you didn't arrive in an ambulance, then it's not an injury.
Right, yeah. So they would send these people to like the first aid tent to get their wounds disinfected. They would use this painful spray that employees described as being, I don't know, like iodine and alcohol, or maybe there was some mercury in there. I'm not quite sure what it was. But there was like this pink stuff, and they would spray it on people. And it was so painful that they would scream, they would run around, and sometimes they would run right into the parking lot just screaming in pain. And we're talking about like grown men, children, anybody who had this stuff applied to them would, like they were describing at one point like a bodybuilder who looked this big tough guy who, as soon as they spray it on one of his legs, he just like starts screaming and stuff. And then they said, okay, let's get your other leg down. He's like, no way. And they're like, it's going to get infected. He's like, okay, that's fine. You're not doing that to me again. Like, so the employees, this is just to give you, this is another example of the culture of the place. The employees started this game where they took taped a 2x2 square on the ground, and they made a game out of it. And they told the people, okay, we're going to spray you with this crap. If you can stay within this 2x2 area, we'll give you a prize. And they said out of like 3 seasons, one of the people who said that they worked there 3 seasons, out of 3 seasons and treating thousands of guests' wounds, let me say that again, thousands of wounds over 3 seasons, just to give you an idea of the numbers we're talking about here. Only one person actually was able to stay in the 2x2 grid, and they weren't actually expecting that to ever happen. So they didn't really have a specific prize in mind. So when he was able to stay inside of the 2x2 square, they're like, pen? They gave him a ballpoint pen from the park, with like an Action Park pen.
Free pen's a free pen.
And the guy was kind of pissed off because, you'd probably expect some sort of cash prize or, Guinness Book of World Records or something. I don't know, but they'd never expected it to happen. So they didn't actually have a prize ready to go. Thought that was just such a strange story. But the fact that they kept using this spray kind of reminds me of like the Milgram studies. But then I read another anecdote on a blog that at one point the supervisor of the first aid tent had some extra money in the budget. So they were using this spray because it was like literally the cheapest thing they could get their hands on, I guess, as they do at Budget Park. Yeah, a new nickname. So at one time they had extra money in the budget. So the supervisor bought a disinfectant spray that didn't hurt at all. And when they did this, guests actually started to complain that it didn't hurt. like the guests wanted the experience of having to go through like they heard their friends had to go through this, and it was like a rite of passage or something, and they wanted to prove how tough they were. So they complained. So they said they went back to the pink stuff because too many people were complaining that the spray didn't hurt.
Well, maybe they were worried it wasn't working.
Yeah, they said some of them thought it was just water, but they said also some of them were just complaining because it wasn't painful.
Okay, I changed my mind. This isn't Lord of the Flies Park. It's Darwinism Park.
It's insane. The whole thing is just nuts. The park is nuts. The guests were nuts. The whole thing is just absolutely nuts. So it's, like I said earlier, I don't think you can blame the park 100% because people going there were absolutely out of their effing minds. But they were also children, a lot of them too. So you can't really blame children. Well, they're out of their minds just in general.
Yeah, you think like me is out of my mind? Imagine giving me like 3 beers.
Right.
I'm just going to be like, I'm going to be loopy. I'm going to be jumping up and down on the roof of a Matchbox because, like jump off or something.
Yeah. So that's what I had on the Alpine slide. Agent Kruger, you mentioned something about the ball and the ball. Would you like to tell us about that one?
Oh, God.
Agent Kruger?
No, Agent Kruger.
I think he passed out from the stupidity.
No.
I guess we lost him.
No,
there he is.
I'm here.
He's back.
Wire was loose.
Oh, okay. What was the
question?
Would you like to tell us about the ball and the ball, Agent Kruger?
Oh, no, the man and the ball
yeah,
was a half-cocked idea of, I believe it was Gene himself, but also he hired a couple local welders, again, to like throw together this track of like PVC pipe, and that the idea was to throw this individual into this ball and then send him down this PVC pipe trail. And then you just get a good ride out of it, right? Or what? I don't even know what the hell they were thinking. There was ball bearings exposed inside the ball itself. Like, this thing is crazy. I mean, it looks like you can get shot out of a cannon with it and you would survive, right? But I mean, I posted a picture of it in the chat.
It does kind of look like fun.
It looks like you got some super glue and just glued a bunch of shopping wheel carts.
I mean, it looks like a really fun idea. So I think the idea behind the ball would be that you wouldn't be spinning upside down, which would be a very uncomfortable ride. The ball would spin inside the ball, so you could stay more or less upright during the ride. So it would be a very comfortable ride. It sounds like a lot of fun, but the PVC track was literally, just like Agent Kruger said, just PVC pipe. They probably even used that blue glue to glue it together. Like, we're talking about a big heavy metal ball with a man inside of it, and they're just
suspended by PVC.
I mean, it goes down the entire the hill at the top where you get dropped off by the ski lift. You would hop in that thing, and the guy who put it together, again, he was using PVC pipe, and then
I would expect that to fail.
Yeah, the PVC pipe, it was on a hot day in the middle of the summer, and that expands. So when they sent down the poor son of a gun that had to test this ride out, he actually went down it so fast that the track gave way, broke off, and then he rolled off into the actual highway that was adjacent. I think it was the 94 highway you guys touched base on.
Yeah.
And he went screeching across the highway into the swamp that was next door, and it was just a complete failure. Yeah. And this was like a prototype ride that he really wanted, and then there's so many other like it. I mean, there was like one that he was inspired by the G-forces of a plane, or like zero gravity, or whatever the hell it was, and it worked a couple times. And when you see this thing, it's like it's two big long humps. So like you would go through the first one, gain speed, launch off it, land somehow, and then go off another one. And somehow there was this kid that went off.
You can tell that he was thinking about momentum. But like
speed, action.
I mean, yeah, exactly, right.
The experience.
I mean, I don't know. You gotta hand it to Gene Mulvihill, whatever.
Mulvihill. Wait, what? Never mind.
Mulvihill, right?
Mulvihill.
Old Uncle Gene. I mean, you gotta hand it to the guy. Like he wasn't afraid of taking risks. You know, like.
No, I think the people that were testing those rides out weren't afraid of taking risk more than the guy who was just thinking. I don't think, did you guys find out, did he ever test one ride out himself?
I don't think so.
I think he knew what he was doing.
Random people down.
I mean, he knew how to attract the customer. He knew how to get them to be like, okay, well, that looks dangerous, and I'm dumb enough to go down it. Because, I mean, before, I'm not sure, he was in Wall Street before he became a water park owner, and he was part of the penny stocks pump and dump scheme.
Yeah.
So, like, he knew that he wanted to get you that little taste. Before he purchased these ski resorts, he knew what he was doing. So when he's like, hey, man, I'm going to build the best water park. I don't care if it's not safe. I'm going to hire local people. I'm going to cut corners. I'm going to do what I got to do to make this monstrosity.
Well,
and they're dumb enough to go down it.
Fun fact is somehow through Gene's a little tangled life, he became close friends with Donald Trump, the president, or who he was the president. And Trump ended up investing in the park, but he pulled out after even Trump, he said this park was just insanity, sheer insanity.
So he pulled out his investment.
I mean, he himself was looked at as a Donald Trump. I mean, and a Gordon Gekko, if you will. Like he was revered as somebody who knew how to play the stock market and do it right and make money and all this stuff. But it wasn't. I mean, he got chased out of Wall Street. He was kicked out. So and then he came over, to New Jersey and then decided to build this monstrosity park, which, I got to be honest, when I was younger, I'd totally do it. Now I'll break something. I won't heal as well. So, I'm not going to do it. But there was, the rides, those concepts that you would have. He had another one. I forget. It was like the pipe slide or something like that. And you would actually attach like a loose piece of plastic on, again, PVC piping. And PVC pipe, that immediately stands out as a cost-effective way to make a track, right? Which, again, that's like, to me, that's a red flag. That's like, he's cutting corners. He's like, you know, I don't think he had evil intent, but it's just like, man, you're going to send somebody down that. I mean, the fact that he made that bar napkin ride, you know, where it's like the only place you can find a human can go and get 9 G's G-force. I forget what the quote was. He was like, the only 2 places you can go and experience 9 G's as a civilian, one being in a jet, an airliner or whatever, and then the other going to this water park and getting onto that cannonball loop run or whatever.
Yeah, the quote was like a fighter jet, like an actual fighter jet, not...
Well, let's talk about the cannonball loop.
Exactly. I love it.
That's probably the most infamous one. I mean, maybe besides the alpine slides, I don't know. But so, yeah, as we said earlier, it was designed on a napkin by Gene himself, who had 0 ride design experience. He just thought it would be a good idea. So they slapped it together, and they would test it with some test dummies, and they would adjust certain things like the water pressure going down and whatever. And I don't know, some people said that I don't know if there was actually water going down or they like just hosed you down before you went down or something, and they would like adjust the angle and stuff. And the test dummies would come out all mangled and stuff, so they got it dialed in a little bit,
or decapitated.
Or decapitated. Yeah. So they got it all dialed in and stuff, and then once they thought they had it reasonably well working, they started paying employees $100 a piece to go down to test it. And mind you, this is in the early 80s when $100 that's like $10,000 now. That was like a lot of money back then. They're giving teenagers...
Hey, if I'm working that summer job, I'm doing it. Thanks, Uncle Gene.
So yeah, they'd pay their employees $100 to go down this thing. So some people went down, and the first few people that went down came out like just completely beat to hell, because what would happen was they wouldn't have enough momentum to clear the loop, and they would fall, and then they would smash their faces into the bottom of the loop and then just continue going through. So they were coming out all bloody. And then the next few that went through came out with, in addition to being bloody, they were cut up. They had cuts all over them. And they opened the hatch at the top, and they looked down, and they found that they were getting cut by teeth that had been embedded in the ride from the previous test subjects.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
dude.
Yeah, I have a question. Since it's like a water slide and there's water in it, what if you don't, for whatever reason, don't gain enough momentum to like actually clear the loop at all, and you're just stuck at the bottom? How did they get you out?
I don't think that was a problem.
Really? Because I was gonna say that'd be terrifying, trapped in a dark water slide,
stuck at the top. Yeah.
How do you get the person at the bottom though?
That person at the bottom is traveling really fast. Like they.
But yeah, and that ride, I guess, wasn't running all the time, but it's probably one of the more insane inventions of Gene, because he didn't do it with any sort of plan. He just said, let's make a loop and see what happens. And people got fucked up in that thing.
From what I understand, also, like when you came into the park, that was one of the first rides that you saw. And so like it made an impression on people. Like you're just like, holy shit. Yeah, that's like what we're talking about before. Some of these rides were almost like a thing of fiction. You know, like people didn't know if like some of these rides really actually existed or not if they hadn't been to the park, you know? And so like when you ride into the park right there, you saw the fucking cannonball loop, and you're just like, oh shit. Okay. Oh shit. Here, all right, it's real.
Yeah, because
it's on, dude. It is on. I guess it's on.
You remember when you're a kid and your friend would come back from vacation with all these tall tales? Oh yeah, I went to Hawaii. I rode some sharks. I jumped off of cliffs. I flew an airplane into the water, or whatever crazy stories they come back with that they're all making up.
Mount Kilimanjaro or some shit, whatever, something.
Yeah, but this one, people would go and they'd be like, oh, this is for real.
Well, when you get back, you have proof, because you'll likely have cuts, at least somewhere on your body.
If you have the scars to prove it, then you know your story is legit.
Your action tattoo.
Yeah, dude, your action tattoo.
Well, it was ran by kids. I mean, it was ran by the youth, right? I mean, it was anarchy, kids. Damn near.
And probably high.
Yeah, and then yes, but like more, the engineers that built that ride were more high than the kids that you know, or quote unquote engineers, right? Like they were cranked up on something. Like, hey, man, they're going to shoot outside the mountain, and it's going to be awesome, man. They're going to be safe. They're going to love it. And we're going to make $1 million.
That's good. That'd be a crazy story to tell your grandkids.
You see this scar?
There's like a lot of rides that we haven't talked about yet, but let's talk just a little bit about I think we mentioned the wave pool. But let's talk about that one a little bit in detail, because one of the problems was, I think somebody mentioned earlier that it was fresh water, not salt water. So you wouldn't float in the thing. You would just kind of sink. And that was very difficult for people who could not swim. So new lifeguards would be kind of hazed. They would place them in the station that they called the death chair. And that's by the area in the wave pool they called the death zone. So they would spend their entire first shift saving people from drowning, like constantly the whole time they were that was the experience. Like, I've been to a wave pool before many a time, and I've never seen anybody drowning. This was nonstop.
Were they in inner tubes?
Yeah, no.
Are you serious?
Yeah, some people thought part of the ride was to drown. Just like
how big were these waves?
3 feet.
3
yeah.
feet.
Also,
so kind of like being in the ocean.
Also, they had to regularly clear out people from the pool, because regularly there were too many people in the pool, and the pool was so filled from human waste, blood, gore, mud, and just all sorts of stuff that was too murky to see the bodies, see if there's any bodies at the bottom. So to clear the people out, just to check if there are corpses at the bottom of the pool.
Yeah, to see if anybody was drowning that needed to be saved.
They had that exact ride, the tide pool, or like it was like Pirate Bay or something like that. I forget what it was called, but like they had that exact ride. It inspired so many other water parks to make these stupid rides, but it was cool when you got into it. But at your certain age, you were actually designated not to like go, like a lifeguard would see your wristband or something like that.
Yeah.
And you couldn't go past a certain point. But these waves got pretty big. And I remember I had to actually save a couple kids, like in summer. Like, we were just together, and somehow they launched themselves out further than they could touch. And like these waves would come rolling in, and you'd be like, no, here, grab the inner tube, hold the inner tube. Why the hell are you out here? I can't swim good. Why the hell are you out here? You know, like,
if you want the
keep
ultimate,
berating them.
If you want the ultimate wave pool experience, drive to your local ocean, and that's a really fun one.
Plus, what is it?
I mean, getting in a riptide.
Riptide, yeah.
We have
yeah.
The problem with that is the beaches up here, we suffer from whale attacks, so that's not really a safe option.
That's part of the experience.
Yeah, that's true. That's
drowning.
No, I heard we suffer
abandoned.
from Alaskan currents, and that's why it's always so freaking cold.
Oh, the water here is
part of the experience.
Unbelievably cold. I would,
it's not that cold. You guys are wimps.
I would jump in right now if I could, though, if I was close to the beach. But there's a lot of rides we haven't mentioned yet, but we're getting on a little over an hour here,
and it's like 100.
And I'm like,
I'm melting.
Yeah, it's really hot in here.
Hey, you guys too? I have no circulation in my apartment.
But I did want to mention one last thing, which was the food service. So they put the youngest employees, we're talking 14-year-olds, in charge of the food service. And some of them said that they would partake in certain shenanigans when it was slow. For example, they would use the fryers, the deep fryers, for science experiments. They would just throw any old thing in there to see what would happen. For example, they would put plastic cups in there and they would turn into Frisbees. or they would throw loose change in there and wait for it to, it'd get really hot, and then they'd throw it on the ground and laugh when people tried to pick it up.
Oh my God, these people are evil.
This place was just fucking insane, dude.
Yeah, it's probably on the top of everyone's heads.
I don't know. It sounds like kid heaven. Like I can imagine being a kid either working there or going there and just.
Man, it'd be fun to maintain the go-karts, just kind of like disconnect the brakes secretly.
Yeah. So did you had a story for us, Age and Ether?
Oh, I just wanted to mention. So we're researching Action Park, right? And I come across this story, and it's just a day old, and it's about a water world over in the UK. And I guess a bunch of guests had a serious reaction to the water. They were like coughing. Their eyes were red. People were like retching and throwing up. So somebody called 999, which is equivalent to 911 here. They called emergency services. They came in with like a helicopter, ready to airlift people. They're like treating everybody. And the water park, they just totally blew it off. They were like, it was an over response and we could have handled it. It wasn't that bad. And
the guests were only actively just kind of dying.
The guests were really mad. Like, they did interviews with people and they're like, no, the chlorine was so strong. We had to go to the hospital later for chlorine poisoning.
Ow.
Like, I saw that.
Yeah, they were really, so the guests are really mad because the water park, Water World, is claiming that, it wasn't that bad, but all the guests are like, no, in our experience, our personal experience, it was pretty bad. Our eyes are still red. We're still coughing. The children who threw up probably aren't feeling so great.
I think this is like a parallel universe experience where this should have happened to Action Park, but the timeline split and it didn't happen there.
Well, there's just so much more media coverage nowadays in that, it's available on the internet. I mean, here we are, we're over here in the Americas, and, I have instant access to this story.
Yeah, I didn't even know Waterworld existed until you mentioned that.
Yeah, I wanted to research it more, but I figured it would be kind of redundant.
I saw that one because I was trying to look at other water parks to see what their injury rates compared to Action Park, to see, but
I'm hoping a lot lower.
I could find almost nothing to compare to, like, most parks. Like, they have one or two incidents over the years. Like, I found one thing at Raging Waters in San Dimas where there's a ride, what was it, like Roaring Rapids or whatever.
Where there's a waterfall.
It was that one. Remember where it had multiple paths you could choose?
Yeah.
And you could, and it had it had like a bunch of small slides that would go into like a middle area, and then like 3 or 4 slides that would go to different paths and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess there was this girl that was with her uncle, and the uncle's inner tube went down to the next area, and he started walking down to the next area, and there was a sign that said, don't do that. Her inner tube was swept by the current because, they put like a little bit of a current to help you along to kind of propel you. And her inner tube swept down the slide into him. He fell onto her and she became paralyzed.
Oh,
right.
Wow.
But that's like a freak accident. Like,
yeah, that's just horrible.
Raging Waters has been open for decades, and like, you're going to have a freak accident if you have so many thousands and thousands of people going there every day. Sooner or later, something like that's going to happen. But like, that doesn't seem like negligence on part of the park. That just seems like, and I went on that ride when I was a kid, and that would happen occasionally. You would lose your inner tube down to the next section just because of the design of the ride. People were getting off of their inner tubes all the time to kind of like chill out in like the little mini pools and stuff. And it just happened a lot. But usually people didn't walk down. They usually like slid down to the next area to get their tubes. So it was just like it could have happened to anyone. It's just like a freak thing, It's just really unfortunate. But I couldn't find anything that compared to Action Park. Nothing even close. Like, not even in nothing at all in the same ballpark at all.
Because in total, Action Park had 6 deaths, and there could be more.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. So their total 6 people died. So on July 8th, 1980, 19-year-old George Larson was going down the alpine track, and his sled jumped the track. He struck his head on a rock and went into a coma and later died. Gene lied to the press and to the anybody investigating or whatever. He said that it was actually an employee because it benefited them better if it was an employee versus a guest. It was sort of like a different category, and it like because they didn't report it right away as they do.
Yeah, didn't they also say it was in an off season, off hours? Yeah,
something like that. But it was not an employee of the park. They just lied and said it was. And they made up Gene made up a tall tale to tell the newspapers, and the newspapers actually took his side and believed him. The family's lawyer convinced the family to settle for $100K, and I think it's because the lawyer was worried about like litigation, the fake insurance thing that we mentioned earlier, and stuff like that. Because whenever somebody sued the park, Gene never settled ever. He would drag it on as long as possible. And even if he was found guilty or they found against him, he just refused to pay, and they would have to send like the marshals to get the money from him or something.
Oh yeah, employees reported that Gene refused to pay like some taxes and things. So at first the marshals came over and were like, "This is a legal robbery, I guess. And eventually just came like a normal routine. Okay, here's the cash register. Take what you want. Please don't hurt me.
Yeah, the marshals just show up to the park and just like, yoink, here's our money. It was crazy. But the lawyer told the family that teenagers weren't worth anything or they weren't valuable, so you're not going to get any money for them, for your kid that just died. But I think it was more the lawyer didn't want to go through the whole litigation that they knew was ahead of them if they tried to sue Action Park. They knew that even if they did win, it was going to be a very long road to win that lawsuit. And a lot of these cases, you could go into a lot more depth, but we're going to skip over them pretty quickly because we're getting on in time here. So on July 24, 1982, George Lopez, a 15-year-old boy, drowned in the wave pool. On August 1st, 1982, a 27-year-old man, we already talked about that. Yeah, the old kayak deal, where he got electrocuted under the water. So we don't need to talk about that one in detail. In 1984, this is when the heart attack. So somebody on the Tarzan swing supposedly landed in the water and it was so cold that it sent them into shock and made them have a heart attack.
I don't think we discussed the Tarzan swing.
No, we didn't really talk about the heart. Maybe we should talk about the Tarzan swing for a moment.
Yeah, because basically it was just like it was like a rope. You jumped off and you swung on it into like a pool.
Yeah.
And the water was so cold most of the time, riders would be shocked and forget how to swim, and they'd have to be saved.
Yeah. But that's not the only reason it was fun. This was apparently, it sounds like a good, wholesome ride. Tarzan, we're going to swing into the water. That sounds like fun. But apparently, a lot of the riders would do things like as they flipped into the water, they would flip off the crowd behind them waiting to go on the ride. Or they would pull down their shorts and show their junk, or pull up their tops and show their tops. Or they would say, if the crowd waiting saw somebody get injured, they would call them like, hey, you're a fucking pussy. What's wrong with you? And stuff like that. Like there was a lot of heckling and nastiness going on this ride, apparently. And, fights would break out here. There's another ride we didn't talk about with rafts, where if a raft would bump into each other, people would just start fighting each other all the time.
I think there's two of them like that.
Yeah, there's a couple. We didn't have time for that, but there was apparently a lot of fights and brawls would break out all the time on this thing. So moving right along. Well, I guess
these guys think they're in a John Wick movie.
The Tarzan one, though, I don't know if you can really blame Action Park for that because maybe they had a pre-existing condition. I don't know. So
did they have a heart attack right away?
I think so, yeah.
Action Park can be blamed.
I'm going to blame Action Park.
I think all of these deaths and injuries are mostly in Action Park's fault. I think if they went
in the water and then it was like an hour later, but if it was right away.
Yeah. All right.
The water shouldn't be that cold, though, because this was a regular thing.
On August 27, 1984, Donald DePass, who was 20 years old, died in the wave pool. And on July 19, 1987, an 18-year-old named Gregory Grandchamps also drowned in the wave pool. So that's 3 deaths in the wave pool that I found. And that's kind of crazy that they even left it open after the first person that died or didn't come up with some way of making it more safe. But it was just sort of the philosophy at the park that it was, it was your risk to take. So, the park was sued many times, as I mentioned, and they usually won them. And when they didn't win them, they made it, the Gene dragged it on as long as possible to make it really hard to sue them, basically. So we mentioned earlier, like, how did they get away with this for so long? And it turns out that Gene, this is a small town, right? We're not in like a huge town. This is a small town. So Gene had a lot of the local politicians in his pockets. He would like buy them houses and cars, and he would buy them dinners and, just other benefits and things like that. So they would just kind of look the other way, right? And in addition to also mentioning that a lot of the injuries just were not reported at all. So the government technically didn't know about most of the injuries. But even the ones they did know about, the government, local officials, they were willing to look the other way because of, first of all, just straight up bribery. But also, this park was by far the largest employer in the area, and it brought in a lot of money to a small town, like a lot of money. So I think that was also a factor in why they were able to look away. And he probably already also had ties with like the New Jersey government and stuff like that. But I didn't have time to look into those specific ties so much. But probably he shook a few hands there to get away with all this stuff for so long, for like 20 years. So yeah, as we mentioned earlier, Gene didn't believe in insurance, or he didn't want to pay for it or whatever. So he set up a fake shell company to insure the park because it was required as part of his lease that he had insurance. It's probably a legal thing anyways. But he also used this shell company to launder money. It was called London and World Insurance. This led to an investigation and conviction, and this is sort of like where the whole thing started to unravel, and this is sort of the beginning of the end. As part of the conviction, the state of New Jersey told him that he would have to give up ownership of the park. Instead, Gene, who's never one to follow rules, said, nah, fuck you guys. He stopped paying his lease to the state and became as obnoxious to them as possible, so much so that at some point, the state just said, all right, we've had enough. We'll just sell you the land so we don't have to deal with you anymore. instead of actually like sending him to jail or something. How crazy is that? But so, yeah, Gene wanted to build a park where the action was controlled by the individual, not the park. And, there was a danger involved, but it was the responsibility of the guest to take whatever risks they were comfortable with and live with the consequences. But I can't help but think that that's just a convenient cover for cutting costs, hiring teenagers instead of experienced adults to do jobs that experienced adults should be doing. Managers and people, you can't pay them minimum wage to be like the head of security, And I think that part of that was just an excuse. I mean, I think he was sincere in part, but I think it was also a cover for just how dangerous and hurtful this park was. And like I said, there was no comparison as to other parks of just how many people got hurt. And I think that, he tried to cover that up as much as possible. And part of that cover up was, well, it's their fault for they're the ones taking the risk, but who knows, maybe he was sincere, and it's hard to understand, to wrap your head around. But in order to understand it, I think you have to realize that it wasn't just the park being risky. It was also the guests being risky. Like they were in on it too, it's such a crazy, crazy place. But, before you think that, this is a thing of the past, there's nothing like that going on nowadays, I would like to give an honorable mention to the roller coaster and ride manufacturer named Intamin, Intamin. They make roller coasters. They make some of the baddest ass and dangerous roller coasters in the world. They have rides all over the world and amusement parks everywhere. For example, their ride Accelerator is at Knott's Berry Farm, and I said dangerous. Well, this ride once had a launch cable shred underneath of the cart, and the shrapnel hit some guests and injured them. There's a video if you'd like to find it. It's a little unsettling. It's not too graphic or anything.
Is that the one where it chopped the girl's legs off?
No, that's a different one. We're gonna get there.
Why are there so many of these?
Yeah, that's why I'm bringing it up. Their famous ride, Top Thrill Dragster, which is basically the same thing as Accelerator, only on steroids. They also had a shredded cable incident that injured guests. But on August 15th, 2021, a piece of the coaster car actually flew off and hit a guest who was waiting in line, hit her in the head, causing serious but unspecified injuries. The family has not said exactly what it is, but it's rumored to be like she had to go to, critical care in the ER or whatever. It's rumored that she got permanent brain damage from this. It just smacked her in the head and just crushed her skull, and is what they think happened, basically. The ride has been closed ever since, and a lot of people think that they're waiting for it, the bad press to die down before reopening it, because like we're talking about $20 million coasters. They put a lot of money into these things. They don't want to just shut them down. I mean, the park operators, but there is a slightly taller and slightly faster ride still running in New Jersey called King de Ka, also made by Intamin. So if you want to experience this danger for yourself, you can still do it. They still got almost exactly the same thing still running. All right, in 2007, a 13-year-old girl was riding a drop ride named the Superman Tower of Power, and she had both of her feet cut off when a cable snapped and wrapped around her legs. And this happened at sort of the beginning of the ride while it was being lifted. If the ride operators had hit the emergency stop, she would have been fine and would have just had a couple of cuts and bruises. But for whatever reason, they didn't notice or whatever. And the ride went up and it just, it tied around her legs and just tightened up and just chopped her feet right off. The doctors were able to reattach one of her feet, and the park was fined. Drum roll, please. The park received a fine of $1,000 for poor maintenance.
Just $1,000?
Just $1,000
for chopping someone's legs off.
Applebee's.
Yep, for chopping someone's legs off.
I thought you were going to say like at least $1 million. Honestly.
Right. No, it was
like even $1 million wouldn't do a dent.
1,000 is nothing for them. Like they make that up in like 5 minutes. So in 2013, a boat on the ride Shoot the Rapids at Cedar Point rolled backwards down the lift hill and turned upside down in the water. The 7 restrained passengers were trapped underwater for a few minutes while guests and employees struggled to save them.
Is this still Intamin?
Still Intamin. That's what we're talking about here. Luckily, in this case, nobody died, but I mean, they were upside down and they could have very well if people didn't get to them in time. Now, next incident we're talking about, an 11-year-old boy died and 3 others were injured when a raft overturned on the Raging River ride at Adventureland Park in Iowa on July 3rd, 2021. So in this case, unfortunately, they were not so lucky. People actually did die on a similar ride. So believe it or not, that's just some highlights because I didn't want to go too much into it. We could do a whole episode on Intamin, easily do a whole episode on Intamin, just like the one we did on Adventure Park. Needless to say, the spirit of pushing boundaries with extreme rides that may or may not injure or kill people is still alive and well today. Whatever your local amusement park, like I said, chances are they have something from Intamin installed. They've been making rides for a long time and will probably continue to do so for the foreseeable future. I think the main difference here is that the insanity is spread out around, the world instead of concentrated into one place. And maybe that's how they keep getting away with it. I don't know, but that's just sort of the appeal, I guess. People see that and they say, well, that's probably not going to happen to me. And it just sort of makes the ride more exciting. But it's just strange to me that some regulator doesn't say, all right, you guys are out of control. We need to shut you down. That's never happened. And people you can look up a list of all their injuries and deaths over the years. And I didn't touch on all of them. That was just the highlights. That's pretty much all we had for this week's episode because I'm about to pass out from heat stroke.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm like
I know,
trying not to mess up the audio going.
Yeah. Agent Ether's swinging at me. No, stop.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this show, you could really help us out by checking out the affiliate link in the description. This week, we have some action park related merchandise. You could check out some t-shirts. There's a movie that was made by the Jackass guy. And there's a book written by the son of Gene Mulville about Action Park. There's a couple things. I'll just put a link in the description that has that stuff in it. And if you decide to buy something, your purchase helps to support the show and doesn't cost you anything extra.
Wow, these products are very cool. You should purchase them immediately and ship them to your current location.
Thank you, Agent Redacted. That was very convincing.
All right, then. Keep it strange.